Before we go on, let's check in on other discussions in diplomatic circles.
Pope Francis has appealed for an end to the persecution of the Rohingya minority as fresh fighting erupted in Rakhine State, northwest of Myanmar.
Amen.
The death toll from the violence that began on Friday alongside coordinated attacks by Rohingya insurgents has reached 98, made up of 80 insurgents and 12 members of the security forces, according to the Myanmar government. In his weekly Angelus on Sunday, Pope Francis expresses full closeness to the Rohingya and urged the faithful to ask God to save them. Earlier this year, he issued criticism of atrocities against the Rohingya, saying they had been tortured and killed simply because they wanted to live according to their culture and Muslim faith. Border Patrol agents from the United States says they have discovered a tunnel running under the U.S.-Mexico border in San Diego, California. Discovered on Saturday, the tunnel, they believe, was apparently used for illegal immigration, and agents have detained about 30 people, including Mexican and Chinese nationals, but no drugs were found. A Border Patrol agent said when agents approached a group of people at the site early Saturday morning, some started running and others went back into the tunnel, leading to its discovery. The tunnel began in a building in Tijuana, more than 300 feet south of the U.S.-Mexico border, and ran past a fence at the Otay Mesa port of entry. Officials have not confirmed where the tunnel started or its length. Hundreds of thousands of people participated in a demonstration in Barcelona over the weekend against terrorism, following the terror attacks that killed 16 people and injured more than 100 others. Led by members of the civil society, emergency and health services, regional and national police, as well as those who helped those affected by the attacks, they held up placards reading, "I am not afraid, we want peace, not arms sales. The best answer is peace, and their wars are death." Over 500,000 people marched from the Jardine de Gracia through the famous street Passeig de Gracia and finished at Plaza Catalonia, a square in front of the Ramblas, an iconic street on which the first attack took place. Another demonstration took place on Friday in Cambrils, where a woman was killed and 5 others injured. That demonstration was attended by as many as 16,000 people, including Spanish King Felipe VI, Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, and Catalan authorities such as the President of the regional government, Carles Puigdemont. Qatar's Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al Thani has held bilateral talks with his Indian counterpart, Sushma Swaraj, in New Delhi. Qatar is still under an Arab embargo led by Saudi Arabia, inflicting pain on foreign migrant workers struggling amid an oil slump and disruption of deliveries for large construction projects linked to the 2022 FIFA Soccer World Cup. India is the 3rd largest export destination for Qatar, and bilateral trade between the two stood at over $15 billion between 2014 and 2015. Moreover, Qatar is home to over 600,000 Indian nationals, the single largest group of migrants in the country of 2 million. Meanwhile, China's Minister of Environmental Protection Li Ganjie has called for closer cooperation between China, South Korea and Japan on the improvement of air quality. He made the remarks during the press conference after the 19th Tripartite Environment Ministers meeting between South Korea, China and Japan in Suwon, South Korea, attended by Li, his South Korea counterpart Kim Eun-kyung, and his Japanese counterpart Masaharu Nakagawa. Li said improving air quality, a top priority among the 3 countries, is the first area of cooperation under the Action Plan on Environmental Cooperation for the 2015 to 2019 period, which was adopted in 2015. He noted that the 3 countries have carried out substantial cooperation in recent years in tackling air pollution and sandstorms, playing a positive role in improving air quality at home and in the region. He expects that the three countries will continue giving full play to their respective advantages and share experiences on environmental protection on the basis of mutual respect and a win-win cooperation.
Welcome back. We're only weeks away now to the general elections in Germany, one of Europe's most friendly and most helpful nations during the migrant crisis. While it deals with internal issues related to migrant settlement and integration, Chancellor Angela Merkel says she still backs a decision made in 2015 to allow more than 1 million migrants to enter Germany, despite coming under fire for the so-called open doors policy and being relentlessly heckled at recent election events. Mrs. Merkel, who hopes to be elected a record 4th term, has on the campaign trail been booed several times by protesters, furious at her decision to completely open Germany's borders during the migrant crisis. She says if re-elected, she would do the same again, risking more outrage from those against Germany's role in this. Now, the EU, on the other hand, is threatening to stop sending aid to countries that do not send failed asylum seekers back home in an attempt to curb the migrant crisis. It'll be the first time Brussels is threatening to shut markets to curb the huge numbers of people crossing the Mediterranean and becoming economic migrants in Europe. The EU has discovered that many migrants are not returning to their home country because of a lack of cooperation from the countries that they originally come from. And many of them are from countries in Africa and Asia which receive overseas aid. The EU's Commissioner for Migration, Dimitris Avramopoulos, wants member states to detain failed asylum seekers so they do not disappear into Europe, estimating that 1 million people whose asylum claims have failed are now in the EU. He says, let's be honest, it is neither good for Africa nor for Europe that so many people cross the Mediterranean. The situation in Italy comes to mind here, which has received 58,000 migrants this year, but 1,569 of them have died trying to get there. The UN, however, estimates that 230,000 refugees and migrants will arrive in Italy this year, as the number of refugees and migrants attempting the dangerous crossing of the Mediterranean from Libya to Italy continues to rise since the same time last year. Let's head on to Rome now, where authorities are trying to get rid of thousands of refugee squatters who have made home in a small square in defiance of an eviction order. The eviction began on Thursday with police using a water cannon and batons to try to drive the refugee squatters who had occupied a small Rome square in defiance of an eviction order. Video images showed some of them screaming and trying to hit police, who were dressed in riot gear with sticks. The square strewn with mattresses, overturned iron rubbish bins and broken chairs. At least 100 of them had occupied the square since Saturday, August 19th, when about 800 squatters were evicted from an adjacent office building they'd occupied for about 5 years. With no other place to go, hundreds slept on the ground in the square in front of the building over the weekend, with their belongings packed in rubbish bags and suitcases. On Monday, police accompanied some of the former inhabitants, most of whom are Eritrean and have been granted asylum, to collect things left behind, including their TVs and clothes. Police said in a statement they decided to intervene because they had information that the refugees were planning to use gas canisters and Molotov cocktails. Some of the gas canisters had already been opened, and they, the police, were hit by rocks and pepper spray. They arrested 2 people. They said the refugees had refused to accept lodging offered by the city. Rome has no state-run shelters for refugees. Only those in the process of seeking asylum are given food and lodging, forcing hundreds of migrants to sleep outside near the Tiburtina train station because they have no money to pay rent and there is nowhere for them to go. The city government says it would give absolute priority to trying to help out families, the elderly and the disabled. It appeared the
Guarda, io sono venuto qua insieme, sono un infermiere insieme a altri miei colleghi di lavoro, proprio perché siamo rimasti...
La legge Dublino va rispettato, sono stati scritti. Noi adesso l'Italia ha fatto una legge schifo e lasciatela andare.
This is where we end the program this week. Thanks a lot for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.